Hello, and welcome to Opinionated Marketers with me, Charles Nixon, and Kieran Kapoor. We are talking about a variety of subjects today, from Swiftonomics to Smashonomics. Kieran, you've been looking at something on the Taylor Swift front.
Yes, it's an article that came out this morning. It's been everywhere, but I saw it on the BBC, talking about a phenomenon known as Swiftonomics, which is the impact that Taylor Swift has on a local economy, just on the basis of her Eras tour, which is, of course, a massive sellout tour, global tour. And she comes to the UK very shortly, and there's a suggestion that it's £848 million will come into the UK economy, or be spent in the UK economy, simply on the back of her Eras tour, with people travelling to the venues, with people staying overnight, plus all the things that you'd expect. I mean, I thought of merchandise and that sort of thing, but apparently it's a big thing to have a Swift party before or after the event, and it's turned into this massive sort of social thing. It's not just a concert, and all those things actually put money into the economy and into smaller businesses, which I thought was really interesting. It's not a sort of standard thing that one might think of with a music concert.
It's similar to the situations that we've had in the past with mega bands as they travelled around the country and around the world and generated huge amounts of activity. But this time I think it probably is just bigger. And we do have a social phenomenon which is here, which is that people are much more interested in social events, social feel-good, as a result, I think, probably of the pandemic. So therefore your parties, etc., which now happen on a fairly regular basis for things such as the Oscars and others, and people getting together, whether it happens to be virtually or in physical form, to watch the Eurovision Song Contests. So we have a change in the way in which society now gets its kicks, if you like, relaxes, and we make much more of the events that we have had in the past. Going to a concert was just a case of going out and going to a concert and having a drink afterwards and coming home again. Now it's much more of an event, and that, I think, is because we want to feel events. Society has been battered and bruised, and the result of which is we want to feel that camaraderie with other people. And I think that's something which is now writ large with Taylor because of the sheer volume of fans that she has around the world. And of course, the media itself hypes it up because they want a big story to report. So I think from an economics and a marketing perspective, yes, if you want to haul the signs down and replace them with we're Swift friendly or whatever it happens to be, then by all means take part.
Quite, and I think you're right. It's thinking about that. What do the fans get out of it? The article on the BBC said this morning what an economist was saying. If you're not a Swiftie, the idea of each person spending between £200 and £400 for the ticket, the travel, and everything else might seem outrageous. But if you're part of that, exactly as you said, you want to be part of the event. It's all adding to your memories, and therefore that's seen as an extremely important thing to be doing. But it's an interesting marketplace.
It is, and you could merge it together with the sort of travel and entertainment marketplace, and considerable amounts of short haul travel is done for the same sort of issue. So I think that we've got a changing pattern of consumption there, which is very interesting to monitor and potentially analyse for new business opportunities.
I was going to say, and the other thing that caught my eye was completely the opposite, and fits into something to do with innovation, which is quite a hot topic for me at the moment. And it's the Apple, I don't know how to describe it, it's their smashing advert, as you put it, where they are seen as taking a pile of electronics and other things and sort of smashing them into a ceiling. It's quite eye-catching as an advert.
And it's there to prove how resilient the new iPad is, as well as obviously high-powered with an AI enabled chip. It's a very interesting one that it is similar, if you think about it, to the very first advert for the iPad which came out, or no, I tell a lie, it wasn't an advert, it was a what we might call a spoof, which was someone who was sitting there reading the newspaper on his iPad, and saying, this is as good as a newspaper. I can read it this way, I can read it that way, I can take it round with me whilst I'm having my cup of coffee. And all the time that the person was talking, he was being buzzed by a fly. The fly landed on the table in front of him, and he smashed the fly with the iPad. And he says, you can see, you can do exactly the same thing. There's an element of radical approach to the way in which Apple has always sold its products or marketed its products. I think it did the right thing by taking it down because people complained, but I think in one instance, one could say people were just being too soft. But on the other hand, that is the way the marketplace is these days. People are much more attuned to what would seem to be the negative sides of adverts of the old days. And so you've got to be sensitive to the fact that you are breaking things, and breaking things is not good in the world where we have a climate crisis and resources are scarce. So they were trying to make a point, they made their point, they withdrew the advert and moved on. And I think that's probably the best thing and the best lesson for marketers.
But equally, they tried something that I did a straw poll yesterday amongst some of our younger sort of Gen Z level people and said, what do you think? And actually the general view was, one, most of them had only come across it through the reactions to it. They hadn't been exposed to the original advert. And they said that automatically actually either amplifies the badness or takes it away, because you've almost forgotten that it's something to do with Apple. You're just looking at it as an advert. They pointed out that none of us could actually remember what the advert was for. We knew it was an Apple advert, and it was described as an Apple advert, but the fact that it was an iPad advert hadn't got there. So if you think of it as a piece of profile raising, it's everywhere. If people were talking about it, well, that's not a bad thing. No. And the idea that it's not offensive as such, it's just perhaps a little bit on the crass side. And I think sometimes if we don't allow people to do things like that, we just do everything bland and boring. And bland and boring is bad too. And for marketers, it's particularly bad. And sometimes as a marketer, I think you just have to be brave and go, we're going to try it. It might upset people. So what? You know, maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe it depends how you're upsetting them. Maybe it depends what you're showing. Sometimes you just have to go for it. You've always been a long advocate for don't keep market researching something, just try it.
Yes, trial and error, if you like, is undoubtedly a quicker method than constant research. The element also, I think, that comes from this creativity is that you may well stumble across something which is a new trend, a new idea that people are comfortable with and has not been either tried before or even thought about before. And I think that is something which we have to constantly strive for as marketers, because that's how we get to the society that we have now with all the consumer services and products and nature of the liberal economy, is because we tried things, we experimented. Innovation is undoubtedly the name of the game for marketers, and so from a marketing communications perspective, nothing is wrong until you try it. So there are some tempering elements there, but I think all power to Apple to continue to do so. I think if someone was to show you the 1984 advert that Apple threw out, which was very, very successful at the time, now people would complain that it was possibly sexist. But at the time it was fantastic and really did break the mold. So I think the element that you've got to consider is, yes, keep trying new things, but be sensitive.
Yes, and perhaps and yes, of course, hold your hand up if something goes wrong because you just missed something. But don't be apologetic about trying things. I think that's the key. There will always be people that tell you, "Oh, that's a bit risky. Let's not do that." And sometimes you just have to be sort of bold and brassy and go, "No, we're going to give it a try." And I do think overall, I very much doubt it's damaged Apple's brand in any way, shape, or form.
Oh no, I think they probably, as you quite rightly say, they got more publicity for it. And given the fact that the marketplace for Apple Pros, which is I think what they were bringing out, is a limited niche marketplace, and they were trying to resurrect the idea of you should have a new one. Because I mean, quite frankly, I've still got one of the very first Apple Pros, and it works brilliantly. And so I've got to be convinced to buy a new one. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get people to buy new products that will replace either their laptops or an old iPad. So I think that the innovation process is a good one, as I said, and I think from an Apple perspective, they are constantly going to go through their whole range of products at the moment, I think, and revive them because there's limited amount of growth in the iPhone. It's coming to the end of its life cycle, so the question then becomes what's next. For Apple, it seems that there's a whole variety of what's next. So I think that is a space to watch.
Charles, lovely to speak to you again, and we'll speak again next week.
Indeed. Nice to talk to you. Bye-bye.